The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
All right, Mr. Colin Olson, Mr. Robert Drake, Smyrna High School. It's on your schedule. So there's some great things happening with these two gentlemen's partnership at Smyrna, and they're getting ready to tell you about it. So come on up.
All right. We're glad to be here, guys, and a lot of rural counties here, and I feel like that, what we're going to share today will be something simple, something that maybe you can take with you, and maybe you don't have all the resources of like a Davidson County, maybe you're not even like a Rutherford County or something like in a suburb area, but in those rural counties. So this will be something you can just take right away, and you can taste it and say, this is good, okay? Sound good? Y'all smile. Everybody happy? You happy to be here? Come on now, are you happy to be here? Yeah. So let's learn from each other. This is soon to be Dr. Olson.
Hi, my name is Colin. This is Dee. We both teach at Smyrna High School. We've been working together. I think this is our 10th year now. Over this 10 years, Smyrna High School has really grown a lot as far as the ESL population, and we've developed a lot of sheltered courses. This year we have 27 of those. So this is kind of, I think, what our program is known for, is just the amount of sheltered courses. And more recently, we have an excellent newcomer program. Emily Reeves is one of the teachers who kind of heads the newcomer program, and she's presenting at 1 o'clock on using technology in the program. And I'm hoping over the summer at the next conference in July that all of the teachers involved in the newcomer program will come and kind of describe that program, because that, I think, meets 7 hours a day with the same students. So like I said, we have 27 sheltered classes, and for that reason, we get a lot of visitors really from rural schools whose population is growing rapidly. And historically, ESL students have been kind of the problem of the ESL teacher. And then when you have a whole bunch of them coming in, then there starts to be concern, like, what do we do for math? What do we do for science, especially when you have testing as well? So we get a lot of visitors, kind of like the idea of this conference, but individually. And Dee and I were talking about it yesterday, and usually when people come and visit, they say, like, how can we improve test scores? How can we get these kids to graduate? And the concern is kind of always from the teacher perspective. And when we were talking about it, we thought no one ever asked, like, how can we help the kids? What are the kids struggling with? And so we thought we would open this by asking some kids. Now, these are not newcomers, kids who are actually in standard classes, about what kind of things they struggle with. So the first student is named Danelli, and this one's kind of hard to hear because there's a fan next to her. So we'll see how loud this is.
I wish my teachers give me more examples, or some example that help me how to complete my assessment.
This is actually Luz Estrella, not Danelli. Okay, so she said here that she needed more examples of how to complete assignments. That's one thing that we hear a lot of students say they struggle with, is that they get an F on an assignment and they just didn't understand what the directions were because they didn't grow up in the United States.
So I would like to my teachers like to slow it down a little bit more, because they teach like a new lesson every day. We go to class, and that's hard.
Okay, and kind of off the video, she explained she entered the country 4 years ago from Honduras, has zero English, and I think now she's in dual enrollment English. So she's done really great job. And that was kind of her point, is even though she's not in ESL classes, she has really difficult classes, and there's just like so much content. She's trying to process content and language, and it's just overwhelming. This is the only video that the quality is pretty poor.
I wish my teacher will use subtitles when we watch videos in the classroom.
So as Stephanie said, that she wishes the teachers would put on the subtitles whenever they watch videos. And kind of by extension, I think she points out that a lot of instruction is lecture-based, and that it would be really helpful for the students if they had written notes that they could look at later, just because they tune out for a second and they're completely lost.
I wish my teacher would take time only to explain it to me after class, because sometimes I'm afraid to ask questions in front of other people. It's scared of asking the question wrong or say it wrong.
Okay, so Maria said she wishes that the teacher would ask her individually if she understood after class, because she's afraid to speak in front of her native English-speaking peers. And at least at the high school level, this is something that we hear all the time where kids are struggling, and we say, "Did you tell your teacher?" And they're like, "I'm afraid to talk to the teacher."
I wish my teacher talk more slow. For me, can't follow the rules that he put, because it's hard for me to work when they speak really fast.
Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. Teachers talk too fast, and the kids wish they would slow down.
Regular teachers should be more helpful and understanding with students who are in ESL. Sometimes teachers would probably get mad or frustrated because students probably don't understand what they're doing or the concept of it, and they just think that they're not understanding it, but it takes time to learn it and understand what the teacher's trying to do.
Okay, so here Fatima and Muzdalifa are talking about how teachers just need to be more understanding, because a lot of times, and I understand this because I've struggled with it, kind of take it personal that the kid is not understanding. And we've been here at Smyrna for 10 years, and things are pretty good now, but it's been a rough 10 years. And a lot of teachers have said oh, this kid's being lazy, this kid refuses to do the work, and we have to explain to him he literally has no idea what you're saying. So our final student is Aloy from Cuba.
Which teachers give us less work, because sometimes we gotta look up words in the dictionary, and it takes me longer to read.
Okay, so this, as far as class assignments, Aloy just said he wishes that he didn't have as much work, because it takes him a long time to read it and have to look up words, even though it may be, a math class or a US history class, where literacy isn't the primary objective of the homework. So just to review what these students have said, and when we took these videos, we actually just kind of stood in the hallway and grabbed whoever was walking by. So these are students literally just making it up on the spot. But the things they said they wish their teachers would do would be provide notes, talk slower, give individual attention, give less homework, explain how to do the assignments, and reduce the content. Which, when you think about those things, that's really easy to do. And it's really things we should be doing for all students, regardless if their first language is English or not. But it's not some magical, how are we supposed to help these kids? It's really, simple kind of adjustments that we can do. So, like I said, Dee and I have been working at Smyrna for 10 years. He started in 08-09, and I started in 2009. And this graph is kind of hard to interpret, because we've gone from 50 students the year I started to, I think right now we're at 302. So I made this graph in January. So I think we've gotten 25 students since January. But you can see over just between 2008 to 2012, we doubled. Okay, so this was really rapid growth, and it was part of the reason that I was moved to this high school from Laverne High School. And I think, considering how many people are here, we just happen to have these changing demographics in Tennessee a little bit earlier than some other areas. So I think based off what I've talked to Dr. Clark about, you are experiencing the same thing that we were trying to figure out about 10 years ago. One thing that is a little different, and I'll show you this on the next slide, but, okay, I wasn't. No, but that's okay. So compared to now where a lot of our students are coming from Central America, at Smyrna we got a lot of Karen refugees from Burma, and it was really sudden. So this was my newcomer class, my second year I taught, and it was 100% Karen. Is anyone familiar with the Karen? Okay, well that should show you how there's not a lot of Karen in Tennessee, that only 4 or 5 people are familiar with them. And I don't think this was like a special dress-up day or anything. No. This is just how they came to school every day, which I would like to put this into context and explain a little bit about Smyrna High School. When Dee and I first started working there, Bud Rakes was the principal. When he retired, it marked his 54th year at the high school. So he went to high school there, he was a teacher, he was a football coach, he was the principal. So you can imagine that for half of the lifetime of the school, one person was in charge of it. It was a very traditional school. I've heard this same story from multiple teachers. We have a lot of teachers who actually attended high school, and they would say, oh, when I was there in the 80s, we only had one Hispanic kid. You're like, yes, we know, like Alex Garcia or whatever his name is. Everyone knows this one Hispanic kid. Smyrna, we've had explosive growth in Middle Tennessee, and prior to that, they had the Nissan plant there. But Smyrna was small enough that when I was moved there, I didn't know where Smyrna was, despite living in Murfreesboro for 10 years previous to that. So this was a little tiny, kind of rural school, and all of a sudden they had all of these people from Burma coming, and all of the kids you see on here were born in refugee camps, and the first time they left the refugee camp was when they drove down to Bangkok and then flew to Smyrna. So it was a pretty big adjustment. Most of them had never used toilets. We had issues with like kids spitting on the ground. It was a pretty big adjustment, including several of these students cannot read, could not read in Karen. So for this reason, the school was sort of like, do what you guys need to, and we had a lot of free reign. So one of the first things we did was we developed the sheltered math courses because at the time, I think we still had Gateway for Algebra 2. So that's where we thought our biggest priority was. And when those were successful, the administration let us add more and more and more. So to show the demographic changes to where we are now, in about the time Dee's been there, we've had a growth of 413%. And if you include current students, students on monitoring, former ELLs, and then NELB students who were never in ESL but whose first language is in English, that makes up about 31% of the school. So it was really a lot of change over 10 years, and it was kind of a rough adjustment at times. So at this stage right now, we now have 8, I think 9 next year, full-time ESL teachers. We have 5 teachers who teach only some ESL. So we have 1 person who teaches ESL chemistry, or we have 1 person who teaches personal finance ESL. We have 16 classes that are solely, like these are 6309, 6310, 6316, solely ESL classes, and the majority of these are newcomer classes, and then 27 shelter classes. So we have 3 different pathways. The first one is kind of traditional, how it was when I started there, is that we give 2 years of support So like a ELD 9 and then a sheltered English 1, and then they go on to English 3. And we're really only giving language support. So this would be for, say, a student who moved here from Mexico City and is well educated, probably studied some English. Then we have kids with some gaps in background education. So I don't know if I could say like a lot of Honduran kids kind of fit this model. I'm not sure why, but our Honduran students seem really well educated.
I'd say some of our Arabic speakers, in the sense of,
yeah, that's
as they were coming from Iraq and they were in Turkey, they had gaps. They had periods of time where they didn't even attend school, where they attended school regularly, then they didn't, maybe a year or two, 6 months, and you have those, and then they get here. That they just have these gaps of, they would have strong knowledge in one thing and have zero knowledge in something else, and it would just not make any sense. They had gaps.
So what we would do is we would probably provide language courses all 4 years, because they're, you know, Iraq's a good example. They're gonna have a lot of trouble going into American Lit or reading Beowulf in English 4. But as far as the sheltered content area, they just need kind of a bridge. So especially Iraqi students, maybe a year or two of sheltered math, and then they're going straight into integrated 3 and doing a great job. And finally, we have the students who've really never attended school. I guess the acronym we're using now is SIFE. And for these students, they're with us all 4 years, and pretty much all of their classes, especially ones that are tested or graduation requirements, are going to be with the ESL teachers. And for a lot of these kids, they spend that they're a cohort that goes through all 4 years together. And that's kind of the, really the focus of our program. So these are the sheltered courses that we currently have. So every tested subject, we offer a sheltered course. All of the, we don't put anyone in English 2, so that's why this isn't up here. But all of the math, we offer sheltered courses. The 3 sciences, we offer ecology rather than physical science. The 3 required full credits in social studies. And then we also do personal finance and computer apps, since they're half-semester courses, because of the fact that testing and access are computer-based. And this is the only way that we can guarantee that every one of our kids can have some computer experience. If your school is interested in developing sheltered courses, these are the suggestions that I would have, because this has primarily been my job while I've been at Smyrna. So I think you have 2 main concerns. The first is you need to make a sales pitch to the administration that they should provide you these resources. And I think especially if you're in high school, the most important thing you can communicate to your administration is that this will raise graduation rates. We've had students in this county where we've heard from other teachers where kids took Algebra 1 all 4 years because they just kept failing them, because there was one kid who didn't speak English in a class of 30, and then at the end of the 4 years, the kid had to leave school without a diploma. And it's an absurd waste of money and, you know, destroys this kid's life. But when you have your most needy students being taught in a sheltered course with appropriate instruction, you're more likely to have that kid graduate. And if you're in high school, only 2 numbers matter right now: graduation rates and ACT. And if I were you, I would stop caring about ACT, because that number is not gonna be improved in 3 years. I have up here Master of Your Domain. This has been one of our biggest struggles, is once you have a sheltered course, people are gonna want every ESL kid in that course. And this has been a constant battle over the past 10 years. When we begin the school year, I'll get emails that say, "You've made a mistake, there's an ESL kid in my class." And this comes from all directions. This comes from administration, who is going to say, "We gave you a math teacher for an integrated 1, why can't we put all 40 ESL students in it?" It's gonna come from other teachers who have tested subjects that are gonna say, "It's not fair that I have to eat this bad test score when you have an option." And surprisingly, it comes internally a lot because we really care about these kids. And so we have arguments where someone wants to be like, I really like this kid, I don't want to put him with this mean math teacher, let's put him with the sheltered course, even though that's not in the kid's best interest because they need a more rigorous class. As far as courting new teachers, Mr. Drake's background is not in ESL. He was a math teacher. He actually got involved in the program because when we were developing the idea, the other ESL teacher said, ask Mr. Drake, he'll do anything. And that's how he got involved. So prior to that, he was doing inclusion classes. Yeah. They also had inclusion/newcomer classes, which don't make any sense. But one of the biggest benefits we push when we're trying to get new teachers involved is that your proficiency scores are going to be horrible, more than likely, but your TVAS is going to be off the chart. So Dee was talking about the other day, he was looking at one of his kids, his expected growth was 0.7 out of 100. Okay, so when you take your first test and you don't speak English, you can really only go up. And so even though in 10 years, I've had 4 students pass an EOC, and I've taught a lot of EOC classes, but I've always had a 5 on TVAS. The other benefit, depending on what school you work at, is behavior problems, parent complaints, a lot of other BS that goes into teaching standard classes goes away. You have much sweeter kids, they want to be there, they're way more fun because they're all from different places. We have parties where there's like 6 types of different food. It's a lot more fun, which is why when we go back to those sheltered courses, a lot of teachers like Dee, who started off with 1 ESL class, only teach ESL now and probably never want to teach, standard classes again. For the last 2 points, those are kind of related. One thing we did is we would get additional endorsements ourselves and then teach those content area classes. I think that's a good short-term fix, depending on how knowledgeable you are about that content. But I think it works a lot better to develop good working relationships with teachers in other departments and then get them to teach the ESL classes because they have the materials. So if we're talking about science, they have a lab. They can actually do hands-on experiments with kids. They understand the content knowledge better. But one thing that we've done every time we've added a new sheltered course is someone co-teaches that first year. So the first year that Dee taught, I co-taught that math course with him. And we kind of met in the middle. So a lot of the videos that you're gonna see of Dee teaching, those come from our experience that first year where I would have to stop him and say, like, no one knows what you're saying. And then afterwards, he did the same thing for our chemistry and physics teacher, biology. And so next year, Emily, who's presenting at 1, she's gonna do that with a US history course. So that way we kind of expand our program, and that also lets you see if maybe this person's not a good fit. We have had some teachers at the end of the year say, I don't want to do it anymore. It's not for me. Before Dee shows some of footage from his class, this is one thing that I would suggest you actually consider, or maybe even write down if you do develop a sheltered course, is have clear rules about what the purpose of this course, about what the purpose is. So is the purpose, so I said for the students who have never attended school, they're with us all 4 years. So if you're in that course, we know you're going to be in a sheltered course 4 years from now. But then we also have those math courses for like the Iraqi students, where the goal is to push them out. So have a clear purpose of what this course is because people are gonna try to pull you in different directions. People are gonna say, I need this student in your newcomer math class. And you have to be able to say, that's not the purpose of it. They need to be in a different class, they don't fit in. Is the class tested? If the class isn't tested, that gives you a lot of flexibility, to teach things the kids actually need. Is the class part of a sequence? Okay, so in some of our sheltered courses, like Sheltered Integrated Math 2, the purpose of that course is to prepare them to go into standard classes. And it's important that the teachers understand what the role and objective of the class is. And finally, what are the students' future plans? So we have a sheltered bridge math, which is the 4th math before they graduate. If none of the students plan on attending university or can't because they're undocumented, and maybe they want to go to trade school, maybe they want to work with their parents in carpentry or something like that, that's really going to guide what you teach. Okay, maybe they need to know how to calculate, square footage or do a budget. Maybe they don't need graphing inequalities. Okay, and so finally, some of our outcomes. Since we've been doing it, we've always had a 90% graduation rate. This year is the first time we've had 100% graduating. And I wish I would have included this picture because we have 54 kids graduating this year, I think, or 52. So it's really massive. We have more kids graduating than our first year had in the entire school. We've had many students pursue higher education and graduate from here at MTSU. We have a lot of students going to Motlow. And for many of these students, like that girl, Danelli, well, not her. For some of the students, the 4 years at Smyrna is the only time they've had any educational training. So we had one student who was in that first picture of Babluwa who never went to school, but we saw him about a year ago, and he's owned a trucking business down in Shelbyville with his brothers and is doing great. So the model that we've chosen to pursue, it's not the only model, but it has been successful with our students.
All right. And now this next slide will go right.
Yes.
All right. So when we pull to the next slide, it'll automatically go to some instruction stuff. And before we do that, I wonder if, is there some gen ed, general education people out here? Whoa! Somebody else? There's no one. Oh, you're so brave and awesome. Glad to be here. Well, I'm like you. I'm just a gen ed student, a gen ed teacher, and I teach math. I don't have an ESL endorsement, and so when they talk ELD stuff, and all this stuff, I think they're speaking in tongues or something. I don't know what's going on, but so I'll come from the perspective of a gen ed teacher. So know that I'm not like you, but I admire you. You're amazing. Gen ed teachers are not used to having lots and lots of preps and lots of different students and things. And but whenever we started, just a little quick background, when we started at our school primarily, especially when I got there 12 years ago, everybody looked like this, you know what I'm saying? Everybody was all white and stuff, and we had, and then boom, baby, it just happened. We have all this influx of people, and then Colin came. It was like the coming of, it was awesome. Because we were in trouble, and I really felt like I had, because they say, oh, just put them in Drake's room. I had these, they would struggle out there, they'd put them in my room, I would just grace them, they would sit there, and I'd say, do you understand? Uh-huh. Do you know what I'm talking about? Uh-huh. Is the sky purple? Uh-huh. So, I graced them, just being honest. They would just sit in my class, they'd try to do something, and I graced them because I had so much, I was overwhelmed of other people in my classrooms. You know what I'm saying? To worry about 2 or 3 people that don't speak my language. I had other people. I had, SPED students in there and other people in there. And then it happened. ESL students started affecting our graduation rates and our test scores. And then our school, and I'm just throwing it out there, let's just be real, right? Then all of a sudden, our school was concerned about it. Is that fair? Like, oh my goodness, ESL, you just do your little thing, and now it's like, oh my goodness, y'all better fix this thing. We got a problem, and so when he came on scene, that's when we did. It's trial and error of lots of different things and things. But what I have, you'll see me teach. Don't judge me. These are one quick little like, hey, so what you see is what you see. We just did one little quick jump. First, what we got is my newcomers. This is my newcomer class, and it started the year with nobody in there. There was 0 people, and then as the year goes on, it fills up, and I think there's up to like 25 people in there now, and 26. That's right, we just got another. And here they are waving. Hi. Okay, they're awesome and wonderful and great, and so we start every year with an empty room, and then they just come. How many people would you say, it just feels like they're just coming and coming and coming at your school, right? So we're right there, I'm there, and they're like in my room and things like that. And then what we'll have next in the next few slides of examples of teaching, some good, some bad. Hopefully you can hear it, see what they're doing. You're ESL, most of y'all are ESL teachers. Y'all say, oh, I know what he's doing wrong. Let's see what this one I actually think. Let's hit the next one.
We got this equation right here. We got variables on both sides. So as we look at it, we're going to got here, we've got -5 and -4. So I'm going to add 4 on this side, and plus 4 on this side. That means this will cancel and be gone. Be 3x -5. So the sum of this will be -1. And we have 2x on this side. So now we're going to move the 3x to move it over here. So what we'll do, we'll minus 3x, and then over here we will minus 3x. This will go away. We have -1. On here we have a -x. So now what I'm going to do is going to have to get rid of this -x. Get rid of that. All we're going to do is move it over here, and we'll have a 1. Change the opposite of each one of the for the variable and for the number, and boom, we have an answer, West Weston.
I wasn't supposed to say West West at the end. I'm used to saying, doing mixed language, but I wasn't supposed to do that. That was supposed to be a wrong. What was wrong with that instruction? Fast? Well, I was trying to do it fast because I wanted to do it, but yes. Not enough examples. Never turned around to see. Okay, just rip me apart. Anything else? Because really there's one. The vocabulary. So here's the deal. This is what my problem was. When he would come in, he would tell me, and if you're gen ed teachers, you're going to have to tell them. When you couple with them, when you talk with them, you're going to have to tell them that they're going to have to say one thing. If they're going to say plus, they need to just say plus all the time. They don't need to say plus and add and sum, and they're used to that because those are simple words, but to an ESL, as you know, that's like just one more word I've got to learn, and they don't know what you're talking about. You mix things. That the vocabulary has to be simple and has to be the same every time. Did that make sense? And you need to not talk so fast. And I think that's one thing that I think gen ed teachers don't realize, that their language is complex even when they're talking about simple things. And they need to be reminded that over and over again. He would tell me, he'd say, they don't know what they're saying. You don't know what you said. Oh, yes, they did. I'm a good teacher. Remember, I got all this. And they didn't. And he was right. And you need to have somebody comfortable with somebody calling them out on that. All right, here goes the next.
One thing I didn't notice at the time, like you said, he didn't turn around. One is like didn't turn around to check for understanding. But the kids can't see his mouth. He's just talking at a board, right. And they don't know what things he's referring to. There were also are there any math teachers in here? Okay, there are some. What did he do wrong as far as math? There were 2 math mistakes he made. I don't know if anyone noticed that. Not in the math, but I guess if none of you.
I never did show exactly what I did at the end, getting rid of the negatives and how and throwing them around.
And switching sides without explaining it, doing 2 operations at once.
And actually, in my math classes, especially my newcomers, sometimes there is 0 talking. And because I don't say a lot, I may just say West Westa. I may say, Jawab, Thassazer, answer in different languages, but I will not say a whole lot. And because now in math classes, you can do that. Because it's better, less is better. I feel like. I may be wrong, but I'm talking about in content areas, whatever you can say, less is better. I may say, you know, más plus, you know, igual. I may say a few things, but I try to say it as small as I can. And then my English stinks, and so I don't want to, sometimes they don't know what I'm saying when I say, okay, let's go to next, and, you know, I don't know. I'm country. That means next one in English. And so I try to limit that, but I think less is more in vocabulary.
This next video is for Dr. Thomas. Not this one.
Oh, there we go. I do like word walls, and I do like to say and to show so that they can go up there. I do show because we work word problems. The tests that we have today were tied to language. And so we do word problems, and I do word problems where we'll do vocabulary over and over again. And when they recognize more is más is plus, and they will circle those words that they'll recognize. They might not understand what the whole thing is about, some rocket doing something, but they will understand plus and this. And a lot of today is taking word problems, it's just taking the language and making it into a problem for math. Did that make sense? And so I do vocabulary over and over again. If I ever teach in a regular classroom, those English people, I will do vocabulary all the time. I will have lots of word walls.
Yeah, so before we go to Shelley's video, I like the one on the left because when we created this is actually from like 9 years ago, this sign, but we had a long debate over whether we should use the word inverse, which is what we should be doing here instead of opposite. And we decided inverse was too limited an application and only referring to this one thing. Where we teach opposite, we say like move it to the opposite side. And so we made a conscious decision, like these are the words that we're going to use and get rid of everything else.
Okay, let's talk about graph. Graph. All right. So what is this? Slope of negative. And what is this? Negative. What is this slope? Zero. And what is this slope? Undefined. Undefined. Say that with me. Undefined. Undefined. Good, good, good. Okay, so when we have a graph. Graph. All right, so what is a graph when it's like this? Zero. It is zero, but what is X or Y? X. X. Good. What is this? Y. Y. All right, is it positive or negative? It's on the left. Positive. And this way. Negative. This way. Positive. This way. Negative. This way. Negative. This way. Positive. Okay, ready? And this way. Positive. I'm trying to check you. When it's down. Down. Negative. When it's down, it's what? Negative. And when it's up? Positive. Positive. All right, sounds good. How about a parabola? A parabola, when the A is positive, what is it? Is it go up or down? Up. Show me, up. Up. And if it's negative, A is negative, it goes what? Down. Down with negative. Good. Give me a hand.
All right. Yes, this is for you because I've done a lot of. Their group comes and teaches in our classrooms and stuff, and they do a lot of things with motions and stuff. And so I do motions all the time. And so this student that right there, I don't know privately HIPAA and whatever. I don't know what I can say about him, but to see him to be able to do that and do that. You ever have students like you're just like, it almost makes you want to cry, you know what I mean? Just to see him, he was so much in his shell, so much has things going on, and then to see him to do all those motions, you know, even when everybody, but so when I have certain words, there's words that they're on tests, like evaluate, like graph, like, so when they see those things, I put something with them, so they're saying graph, and they say, oh, because most of these guys, almost everybody in there, I introduced a graph to them, and they're about to take a test. But those ones on a test, they're going to do well because because they've worked with a graph. Did that make any sense? And they've just been introduced to them. And I know it sounds so elementary, left, right, because they don't even know what left and right means. And so I'm teaching vocabulary when I do the left and to the right, instead of saying, scared, derecha, and see, my Spanish is not good either. So, do that make sense? So I try to up and down and arriba, abajo. So I try to put as much language in what I'm doing, and that's part of my vocabulary. I know I have math words up there, but I think if you ever saw it, it says left and right. We work on left and right all the time because they don't know left and right, that word, what that means. And but we do everything, almost everything, we do emotion to it, and I try to attach emotion to it, and they remember it more. And even I see them on those tests. I saw somebody during their tests, they were over like, they were doing that math aerobics, man. Woo, it's so cool.
So one thing I noticed in watching this.
What's that?
Is.
Now, gotta watch when you.
Okay, these students right here at the side table.
Yes.
They've all been in the class for maybe 5 days. So
speak zero English.
If you have a lot of newcomers, you're familiar, they don't say anything or really do anything for the first 6 months because they're in shock. But this is one way, especially the girl in the brown shirt, Wendy, who's just like a deer in headlights. This is a way that they can participate and show that, how much they comprehend is,
Yeah.
But
let me say this. If they were 5 days in a regular classroom, would they have been that animated? 5 days in a regular classroom. She don't even know. She's never seen any school like as big as ours. 2,000 students. She's like, and she's overwhelmed. And we have to almost hold her hand to take her to the next place, even to get to my room and stuff. All of those, except the gentleman, all those right there are brand spanking new. They just came last week and stuff. And that's what sheltered classes do. It opens up people, and then they see the other people doing stuff that are just like them, that maybe are just a little bit further along. You know what I mean? And but the wild thing is, if they would have came just maybe a week or two earlier, they would have been taking 10 ready tests. You know what I mean? Praise the Lord, they just 1 week later.
No, they took it.
Did they take it? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Because they just got here. They took 10 ready tests, and then right after that, they took the WIDA stuff, or didn't they take those?
They didn't take Access, but they took English 1 EOC. And so one of the kids just sat there and stared at the computer because he had never used the mouse before. So he was there for 15 minutes before we noticed.
And that's fine. And I tell you, in the sense,
Sure,
though, but
well.
at least they're going to learn what left and right is. That's real. Does that make sense? This is real. All right.
Okay, we have 2 more videos.
Yeah.
We're going to solve, that means we're going to put the X by itself.
Que vamos a resolver primero mirando el 3 que lleva como la letra que es, o sea, vamos a ver que el que lleva la letra, el que es diferente la.
First, we're going to get rid of the 8.
Que primero vamos a fijarnos acá como en el 8, que ese va a ser quitado porque ya está el 3 con la X.
So it's plus 8, so we do the opposite, minus 8 on both sides.
Que va a cambiar porque este es positivo, va a cambiar a negativo porque va a cambiar. Y luego acá pones el de 23, lo bajas, el de acá lo pones para acá.
8 minus 8 is canceled, it's 0. So all I have is 3x on this side. 23 minus 8, I have 15 on this side.
Que esto de acá restando 8 menos 8 da 0, entonces se cancela, entonces vamos a bajar el 3x. Y esto de acá lo restamos, 23 menos 8, 15.
Okay, I have 3x, 3 multiply x. So I'm going to divide each side, do the opposite.
Que vamos a dividirlo con el mismo número que está acá el resultado de 6. Entonces va a ser 3 menos 3 y luego acá vamos a el resultado de esto vamos a dividirlo también por 3.
3 divided by 3 is 1, so it cancels. X equals, on the right side, 15 divided by 3 is 5. Well, the answer.
Que 3 dividido entre 3 es 1, entonces no es necesario poner el 1, solo ponemos el X. Y 15 dividido entre 3 es 5.
Boom, baby, come on, boom! That's right.
So when we have people visit and observe us, one of the questions they always ask is like kind of whispering, do we teach in Spanish or the native language? I guess that's because of the political climate, which to me is an absurd question. If the kids speak Spanish, then why not teach them in Spanish? But one of the reasons we wanted to include this is, one, good EAs are really hard to find and pay depending on your budget. We have an excellent EA who just had her first baby, and we're really struggling right now not having her there. So using students is a really good way to help the students if you don't have a bilingual EA. And you can see the way that Shirley, who's from Chile, and Dee teach, they're doing it in both English and Spanish. So Shirley's not getting up there and just talking in Spanish. So those brand new kids who don't know any English yet, they're getting the content from Shirley, but the kids who have been there from August, they're also getting the instruction in English.
What kinds of pre-assessments did you do to make sure that Shirley understood the math concepts before?
That's another way, is this is a really good informal assessment. You'll have kids who are like, yeah, I got it, and then you say, come teach, and all the other kids will boo them and be like, he's...
And there's lots of conversation. I may not know all of Spanish, but I know confusion in any language is like, whoa, you know. And so, like, sit down, someone else. And look, here's the deal, always straightforward. In ESL, those ESL students, I tell gen ed teachers when I'm done, look, one, anything you do is going to help them. Two, if you have another student that lets them get a little off course, they were not on course anyway and stuff. And get them. And so whenever I find the student that I just say what I'm saying, do what I'm saying. Now, we just run through this real quick. This is not what we were doing right then, but just to illustrate. But I use students all the time. And and if you have more, I used to have 3 different languages in my same room, and I put them like in centers. And I would go and have someone maybe do it in Arabic, and then I would go over to the Arabic people while another person would do it in Spanish, and then I would go to the Spanish person when somebody would do it in Korean, and then I would go over to the Korean people while we were working, and then we'd come back again, and we'd just do this circle the whole time. And it was slow moving, but it was moving in their own language. And I tell you, that's another thing, when you recruit a gen ed teacher, they're like, I don't speak Spanish, I don't speak, these languages. They don't have to speak those languages. Most of the time, except for when we had Laotian, we had Laos, we have languages, so somebody in the house, in the school, that can help us, that we can go and get somebody. Then we had to go and get somebody to get him help. Nobody spoke Laotian, is that right? I'm talking about,
yeah.
And so we found a student
Pretty
that
rare.
their parents, and so I convinced the teacher, like, hey, can you help him to come in and explain? So he would sit in my classroom, and then during our RTI time, that student would come and explain what I taught that day. Did that make sense? Now he's like amazing. He's in tested courses. 2 or 3 years later, he's doing incredible.
Can I come back to you, Chris? I just want to finish because we're out of time. We only have 2 more slides.
I don't have a question, I just had a comment. This girl was here last year at this time. That's how long she's been here, and that's a testament to your program, that she could understand what he was saying.
Yeah, Shirley's only been here.
Yeah, she started like May last year at Smyrna Middle.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. She's coming up on 1 year.
Okay, this is the last video.
All right. So this is just like the circle of life. It's like whenever they have Simba, when they show it, it's just one big circle back and forth. So simplify, when we simplify, we get it right here. We get this trinomial. Look at that, it's so cool. But now when we factor, we put it back here when we're multiplying binomials. So all it is going one big circle. It's like the circle of life. Oh, Samba. Oh, yes, you remember that? No, it's like just like that, but it's the circle of math. The circle of math. It goes back and forth from simplify to factor, from factor back to simplify. You get it?
All right. Do you think they got it? But here's the deal. I had this when I taught English speakers. You know, I had this cool thing. I used the circle, I play it, and I would sing, the circle of math, it goes back and forth, the circle. And I can't use that. And that's one thing about gen ed teachers, you're going to have to tell them all that stuff, all that cool stuff you got, all those cool stories. I had this cool story about whenever I traveled from Illinois down down through Kentucky to Nashville, and how I got to a familiar area. And I had this cool story. Could not use that because they didn't even know what the states were. You know, I'm like, what are you talking about? And they didn't even understand traveling like that. And so all those cute stories are out the window. If you can get it, when you talk to a gen ed teacher, you're just going to have to convince them that they can't use all those cool stuff that they have. You know what I mean? And they're going to have to start from scratch because they're not going to understand what you're talking about. Now, you understand that. But that was cool when I did that with people, you know? And so...
They have cooler stories. You should ask them about their stories.
Yeah. I used to try to use their stories, some things, and then sometimes, one time we got into an area that I did not want to go to, and then we spent like a day. I felt like, wow, we're going to therapy, you know. we're talking about people dying and things, and boy, it just like went. And then, so yes, I do. And that was the last one. I won't go through these last videos, these last ones quickly.
Oh, because you added.
Yes, that I added down. All I'm going to do is, we did have, don't assume that they'd have background knowledge. And this is generally for gen ed folks when you're telling them how to use a calculator. They don't know how to use a calculator. I constantly put the calculator up there, constantly tell them this is how you turn it on. Say that in Spanish. Say that in Arabic, on, you know. Because they don't know how to use a calculator. And there are, if they move out of my classes, they're going to use the calculator a lot more. And there is a benefit of knowing how to use a calculator, doing instruction on a machine, and that makes sense. And because I do think there's some folks that are going to move out and they're going to work and have instructions how to use a machine, and they may need to know how to do that. I know that sounds really strange, but they really do. Knowledge of the school culture and expectations. I will say in sheltered classes, you can show them, you have a chance to show them, tell them about Bulldog Walk like we have, or why we have a prom, and what is a school dance, why we having the pep rally for the football team, you know, what those things are, instead of them just going there to explain what's going on. I use a lot of life in just as much as content of, you know, when we had the in my classes as anything else. I know when we had the Korean people, we had to go and show them how to go to the bathroom. Some of them, you know, this is a urinal and a sink are totally different things. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. You think that's funny, but maybe you don't think it's funny. But and all ESL students are not the same needs. And I do think gen ed teachers just see them, just like when they're in your class, like, hey, I've got one in my class, and it needs to be in your class. And like, they don't need to be, they're like, hi. Hi. Oh, no, they speak with an accent. They have Gonzalez. You know, it says Gonzalez after their name. I don't know, you know. And I'm like, no, they're hi. Teach them. Be the teacher. You're the teacher. Teach who you have. And did that make sense? I will say there's a sense of that. It's strange to me that some teachers, and I don't want to be critical, but this is just critical of us. There are some teachers that don't teach who you have. You give me, I am a teacher. I'm not an ESL teacher. I'm not a math teacher. I'm a teacher. You give me whoever you give me. It doesn't matter how politically I feel. It doesn't matter how religiously I feel. I'm a Baptist minister. And you know, I teach people that look very different than me, that believe different than me. But I'm going to teach who you give me. You know what I'm saying? And so, be the teacher. They may have different needs. Just because they can speak English, it may mean that they don't know anything. I think sometimes we are gen ed and maybe ESL, that we think just because they have good language skills, it may mean that they know nothing about math content. Did that make sense? And just because they can't speak a lick of English, we think that they must not have any math content. I had a guy that was placed in my newcomer class. I recognized, wow, this guy knows math. He knows things. We just can't speak. He speaks zero English. I said, I'm going to try to get him into another class. Nobody was like, don't put him in a tested class. Don't put him in my class because, you know, that's going to mess up my scores. And so I ended up putting him in a pre-cal class. I really thought that he would I didn't think he would do well. I knew he was higher, but I didn't think, oh, pre-cal higher, you know what I mean? He goes into pre-cal class. Their grade average is 40 to 50. His average was 92. Just because you can't speak the language doesn't mean it goes both ways. And shame on me, I thought, well, maybe he should be in like integrated 1 or 2, you know. No, he was brilliant. Yes?
So I'm elementary, so I'm just curious, do we have, because I think when you're that don't assume background knowledge, the converse is also true. Don't assume that they don't have it. Do we have math, especially in math, and for newcomers coming in, assessments in their first language so we can not waste time for these kids?
We have assessments that we've made ourselves that we use primarily when we go to visit the middle school for upcoming 9th graders. At the high school level, we can change classes a week in. So that's, we just make a schedule and then adjust it if we need to. But yeah, we have a packet with questions that everyone who teaches the sheltered courses for 9th grade puts together. And then based off how there's like science questions and some reading passages, and we use that for placement.
But it's in English, right? It's not in their first language?
No, it's all in English.
It's all in English, it's not in their first language.
No.
Because I'm just trying to think, if I'm taking a math test in Chinese, even if I'm really great in math, I'm probably going to fail it if it's in Chinese.
Yeah, and we do have 2 different groups. You have language problems, but you don't know math. And so we'll put them probably in that lower math class. If you have low language, high math, we're going to try to edge you out, but you're still going to be in the sheltered class, and you're going to do content just like the regular folks. Stuff. We're going to have to cut this off like baloney. And I tell you what, I will say this: when you go and recruit those gen ed teachers, remind them that your scores are going to suck. Can I say that? That's not very. Your scores are going to suck, but your TVAS is going to be out the roof. You're going to have zero. I've never had anybody flip me off, push me or anything. That happened in regular classes. Never has happened to me in ESL classes. And you don't have discipline problems. And those teachers out there, you're taking them out and putting them where they can thrive. The students can thrive. And those teachers out there will love it because they can work. Did that make sense? They'll have less differentiated instruction. Does that make sense? Contact me all the time. It'll be fine. Smyrna High School, you can contact us.